everyone, it's time to forge the narrative.
Hey everybody, this is a special episode of Forge the Narrative where I talk to Reese Reubens from Frontline Gaming, Val Heffelfinger, one of the champions of Warzone Atlanta, and Zach Becker from the London Grand Tournament. This episode is focused specifically on getting ready for tournaments as an organizer and as a player, where we try to get kind of in the mindset of things as people start building their list for some of these larger events and what goes into that whole thought process. I hope you enjoy it. We'll be back next week with the normal group of folks. Hey everybody, welcome to a very special segment of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined today by Reese Reubens.
Hey.
Reese, man, thanks for joining me.
Of course, man. It's always a pleasure to come on the show, buddy.
I am very excited to say that I'm going to the LVO, and this will be my first time.
And it's about time.
It is about time, man. I mean, but 8th edition, let's just talk about how electrifying this edition is, getting people out to the tournaments in droves.
We've never seen the game this popular ever. And we know this not only anecdotally, just through observation, but we know from conversations with GW too. It's like the product is selling so quickly, it's hard to keep up with demand. The LVO attendance is up 25% year over year, which is nuts at this stage of our growth. That's crazy.
Holy crap. Glad I got my ticket. I am booked.
Yeah, we are almost sold out on the 40k events. I'm glad you did. I think we're down to like 30 for the 40k champs, which that may sound like a lot, but we're at like 470 something for the 40k championships event. So it's pretty big. The narrative is sold out at 100. I'm sorry, we had a drop. I think we have one ticket left. If you hear this, jump in and check because you might be able to snag it. They usually it's sold out like in like hours. So those tickets are pretty rare. The friendlies at 64. That one's sold out. The doubles is at like 84. The Sunday RTT is at like 160.
Is that registered? That's people that are registered.
Paid already. Like bought their tickets, planning on coming. The night joust is at like 40. It's insane.
God, that's going to look impressive.
Yeah, I, by my estimation, on Saturday at peak time, we will have between 600 and 700 unique 40k players in the same room at the same time.
Man,
it's nuts. Yeah, it's crazy.
God, I can't wait to roll dice over there.
Yeah, it is a spectacle because we now have, I don't know, there's 4 halls now, and the main hall is 40,000 square feet, and it's now at this stage just 40k. And we actually have some spillover into the other hall, which is also the second hall, which is also 40,000 square feet. Yeah. We have some spillover because it can't fit everybody.
Yeah, 40k in 40k.
Yeah, 40,000 square feet of the Grimdark in the year 40,000. So it's, I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging. We're just really proud of
what
we've
accomplished. No, I asked for it. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's absolutely awesome.
It is crazy, and it's so exciting and fun, and we can't wait to see it because when people walk in, especially for their first time, and we work our butts off on terrain, each table has like a full set. Well, almost. We've almost phased out all the old terrain. So almost every table has a full set of either custom or ITC terrain, like a set. So each table is like themed. It's got a mat, an FLG mat with a matching set of full terrain on it. And these are like multi-story buildings, tree sets. So it's visually, the level of terrain per table is extremely high.
That adds to it. People I don't think necessarily respect that until they don't see it, in one of their games. But when you get there, it just makes it even better.
It's critically important to having a good, fun, fair game, especially in 8th edition. And I'm really just proud of the 6 years basically of nonstop hard work from our team to get the terrain to that standard. And when you walk in, and you see, 300-400 tables at that standard, it's pretty crazy. It's really, really neat to see the look on people's face when they walk in. And they're just blown away.
I'm trying to acquaint myself with the customs, the missions, the format, and everything else, and I'm hoping you can help me because I, of course, want to try to do the best I can in the championships and any other event that I'm getting into. But I know a lot of tournaments kind of have their own thing to them, their own feel to them, and I want to get some of the particulars from you, so maybe I can help build my list, and we can help other people out there that might be listening.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So tell me about the ITC format that you'll be using for the LVO championship specifically.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of misconceptions about what the ITC is or has been or is going to be. at this stage of the game, in the editions past, especially last edition, we had to modify a lot of rules because our community asked us to, right? Whether or not we had to is definitely a point of contention, but we did, but we don't anymore. We play essentially straight out of the book. The only change we have currently is right now ITC recommends that you don't use units with a power level of 32 or higher. The reason being is a lot of the Forge World Super Heavies can be extremely disruptive, like Super Chicken or whatever. But Chapter Approved is coming in December. The LVOs at the end of January. We're going to remove that restriction with Chapter Approved on the way. And it's going to be essentially playing out of the book. The only difference really is the missions. And we use the ITC Champions missions. That's our mission set we developed specifically for 8th edition. And it's still in beta. It's an open beta, so to speak. We've been taking tons and tons of feedback from community members, and we're going to revise the missions one more time, and we're going to roll that out next week. It's going to be a fine-tuning. It's not going to be... it won't
radically change any concepts. It's just going to be tightening up some of the words. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we're going to tighten up the language. There were some things that were unclear, which always happens. You know, it's clear in your mind. You write the rule, someone reads it, and it's the opposite to them. You're like, oh, okay. So we're going to clean up some of the language. We're going to add in some more secondary missions, 2 more. And we're going to tighten up or alter some of the secondary missions that were either had poor reception or just people weren't choosing to use them. Clearly, they're not good enough. So we're going to revise them based on the feedback. And the feedback has been tremendously positive. I really think that we did a good job. And to give credit where it's due, we took a lot of inspiration from the Nova Open missions, the Renegade Open missions, obviously our own ITC missions in the book, even a little bit of Malifaux and War Machine are sprinkled in there. So we stole from the best. We stole from great mission designers. I really feel like we've done a good job and that the feedback has been tremendously positive.
So what are some of, like, because obviously you need to look at the missions when you're building a list, because, you know, I was mentioning this recently, but, you know, when I see a certain set of objectives or maybe a concurrent theme throughout all the missions, it really influences what I sit down and build and paint and, you know, try to play test with and that kind of stuff. So what are some of the core concepts that, if you can give us some insight into those?
I'd be happy to. And you're 100% right. Like, we tell people this, and I'm sure you tell people this to come to events that you run. It's like, play the missions before you come. Play the missions before you come. Do not be reading the mission for the first time at Table 1, Game 1, because you will not do as well as you can if you would have played them one time before you showed up. So do yourself a favor if you're coming to the LVO, please, 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 unless you just don't care and you're strictly coming to drink beer and have fun, which is great. Play through the missions. At least try each mission one time. So the core concepts of the missions are keep it simple, stupid, to as much as possible. That's one of the main things we try to do with everything that we do, is to keep it simple and approachable.
Well, I noticed you had fixed placed objectives.
Not all of them are, but yes, most of the missions have fixed place objectives. I know some people turn their eyebrows up at that. The thing is, in observing literally thousands of tournament games, and that's not an exaggeration, that's the truth.
Nope.
Because we run events all year long, I noticed that people would spend a lot of time placing their objectives, trying to gain an advantage, but there was like plus or minus 6 inches to where every freaking objective was always placed every time. It was like basically you could draw circles on the table, and each objective, depending on the mission, would end up within that circle almost every single time. So it's more of a perception that you're gaining an advantage than an actual advantage.
Well, until you're not. I mean, you could have the game almost be decided by one of those random objective placements in some situations. Therefore, it's not an equal playing field or whatever. But I think if everyone can see the placed objectives, then that is something that's one thing less to think about. It's one of the avenues to a better game experience for everybody involved.
It's a more standardized play experience, right? Like when you play this mission, everybody knows what to expect. We did reintroduce random deployment. You roll for your deployment every game, and that is where you can't, because what you and I know this, right? Like when you play a certain mission set enough, you game for the mission, because you know that in this mission it's Hammer and Anvil and it's the Relic. And if I get the Relic is a terrible mission, but, you know, it's like, you know, like the script is already written in your head. You already know exactly what you're going to do, where you're going to deploy, where you're going to press, where you're going to fall back with maybe 20% variance based on what you're playing.
Do you play Axis and Allies?
I haven't in a while, but I loved it as a kid.
The original game of Axis and Allies, even played in hyper-competitive circles, the first 3 moves are the exact same no matter what.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And we found that with random deployments, it introduces enough of a variable element that depending on your opponent and the terrain, it creates a unique experience almost every single time you play, even if you're playing the same mission. And it's been really, really well received. It's really fun. And it forces you to not just basically build your list to maximize. You have to rethink what you're going to do. And I feel that that's very positive, and it's going to help keep the missions fresh for a longer period of time.
And you guys are using all 6 deployment maps. You don't have the list truncated or whatever. It's right out of the rulebook.
I love all of them. I think that but the thing is, I've always enjoyed it. Like, I was never one of those people like, I don't want to play Vanguard. I don't want to play Hammer and Anvil. I love the tactical options it presents me based on each deployment. Like, if it was up to me, we would play table quarters every single time. I think that's the best. It's my favorite. However, I love all the different options and the different strategies that I am presented with the different deployments. I think it's really good. And
it changes the look of the table too. Like, you can get to a table and go, oh, if this was just Dawn of War, then I've got this in the bag. Oh crap, right. It's one of these others.
Right, and I think that's fun. I think it's great when you come to the table. It's going to really give you the opportunity to display your mastery of the game, right? Because you have to adapt and overcome, and I think that that's positive. And in that same vein of that same philosophy. The primary mission is the same for every single game. It's extremely simple. The primary mission is you score every player turn and every battle round or game turn, depending on the terminology that you use. And you score every player turn. Did I destroy an enemy unit? Yes or no. You get a point if you did. Do I hold an objective? Yes or no. You get a point if you did. At the end of the battle round, you compare it to your opponent. Did I destroy more enemy units than my opponent? I get another point. Did I hold more objectives than my opponent? I get another point. And then there's a bonus point for each mission that is different. So that's the only variance.
And this is where you can scoop more points.
You can get a 5th point. And the bonus point varies from extremely difficult to very approachable. And we did that on purpose, right? So the score, there's a huge score variance, which helps to stratify the field in a big event. It helps to really differentiate the person that comes in 3rd from 4th, etc. And then the other half of it, the other part of the mission set is that part's a given. You always know what to expect. The bonus point's the only variable. So that helps. And it was intentionally designed to hopefully strike a balance between MSU and non-MSU, between killing stuff and taking ground. Taking ground favors MSU. Killing stuff favors armies that are punchy but don't give up a lot of kill points. So that was meant to strike a balance there, right? If you have an MSU army, you might take a drubbing on the kill points, which you're probably going to win on objectives. And if you have a lower model count elite army, probably going to win on kill points, but you're going to have a tough go with scoring objectives. And that was completely intentional.
I practiced mission 1 this week, and I was playing Knights. I got destroyed. I got absolutely destroyed.
Knights is always the outlier in any mission set that is not end of game objectives. Knights present the biggest variable in the equation because the army is so different than every other army. We've made a couple adjustments to make it not as challenging for Knights. Right? You can't overlap some of the secondaries because it gave up too many secondary points, and I think that'll help. But Knights struggle a little bit in 8th anyway, unless you also take like Magnus.
I'm not advocating them. I think they are terrible competitively. Yeah. I mean, I think that they are really impressive looking models and sometimes you can use them as a bully unit, as counter assault or some distraction or whatever. But in some mission formats out there, like a kill point variant, a Knight will give up tons of kill points also because it has all these wounds. Is there anything like that in your missions? Yeah, so that's a good segue into the other part. So the primaries is extremely similar mission to mission. And then we have anywhere from 6 to 3 objectives in our missions. They favor more because the missions are intentionally designed to make you move around the table and not just sit and shoot. So you're going to emphasize mobility or have units dedicated to go getting those objectives. Now, the secondary missions, there's a list of 8. We're going to have 10. We've been testing 2 more. You pick 3 of the 10 secondaries that you think you can score. Each is worth 4 points for a total of 12. You look at your opponent's army, you look at the mission, the deployment, and you go, I think I can get XYZ.
And one of them is Titan Slayer, where you get a point for every 4 wounds, if I remember correctly, that you strip off of a unit with a Titanic keyword. And that gives you a bonus up to 4 points. So yeah, you can strip knights. You can strip points off knights even if you don't destroy them. You can still earn points. But then a knight army is going to very rarely lose the kill point portion of the primary. So, but they're going to struggle to win the objective part of it. So the point there is to build a mission where the player is in control of picking their path to victory. And hopefully if they choose well, they can max out that secondary score and get those points.
And this is even a knight player, is what you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah. And so we built missions that are specific. The secondary missions are designed specifically to counter commonly seen and powerful builds in the meta, or to give you a default to more board control options. Right. So an example is Recon, which is have a model at least partially in all 4 table quarters. You get a point every turn you do that. So a knight army probably doesn't want to pick that. That's going to be very difficult for them to get.
And this doesn't mean contested. This is just have a unit in the 4 quarters. You get the point.
Exactly.
Or do you have to control it?
No, you just have to have both players can score it. So you just want a unit. You want a unit in each, at least partially in each table quarter every turn for 4 turns to max that. And so a knight player, probably not so much. A gunline army, probably not going to choose that. A deep striking, a Tyranid army that comes in from all 4 sides of the board, they love it. They pick it every single time. Another mission is Kingslayer. You pick an enemy character, you nominate it, you get a point for every 2 wounds, or if they have the monster or vehicle keyword, you get 1 for every 3. So if you're finding yourself facing, Bobby G or Celestine, someone who's going to ram it down your throat, it's extremely good model. It's extremely common in the meta. Here, this is a way for you to combat them. Even if you don't kill them, you know you're going to be fighting them anyway. You could strip wounds off them and earn points in the process. So all the missions have been designed with that in mind, to give you a tool to fight against the tools your opponent brought. And then, of course, as gamers do, they game the system. They're already starting to people that play our missions a lot are already starting to shape their list to deny points to their opponent, to maximize their ability to get certain objectives. So it's cool, right? Like, it's already shaping people's lists, as you said. If you play a mission set consistently, you're going to optimize for that mission set, which is part of the fun of
even if it may be 50 points off a list, but it could radically change the overall dynamic of your list. And so it's important. I mean, if you're used to playing one way and you haven't played these missions, you might be a little bit unoptimized, even if you're wrecking face in your local environment.
Yep. We had a player that came to the SoCal Open where we debuted the missions in a public setting, and he had a really good Death Guard Chaos army, but his list, he didn't change it at all, right? He came from an end-of-game mission format where you only score points at the end of the game, except for like First Blood and Slay the Warlord, etc. And he was like shedding points like crazy, and he's like, wow. He's like, I wish I would have played these missions at least a couple times before I came. I would have changed my list. And I was like, yeah. Sorry, dude.
I'm glad you've come around to some progressive scoring, and that's something that maybe another show talks about quite a bit.
I 100,000,000% feel like it's the best, most enjoyable way to play the game. If Maelstrom was actually doable in a large-scale tournament, we would play Maelstrom. It's so much fun. The Maelstrom is vastly improved from last edition, and it's just a blast. But
that's cool. I just had to get that little jab in.
No, hey, dude. No ego here, or minimal ego here.
Well, it's all in good fun, it. So.
Oh yeah, ultimately, if we have a better mission set, I'll be wrong every single day of the week.
For real. No, not to derail it. So, but what is the path to victory? How big do I need to win these games by to make it to the top 8?
So the cool thing about the system is that, and we always tried to build ITC missions this way, is we optimize it for a Swiss system that has enough rounds to determine a true champion. However, we recognize that that's not always possible, especially if you're running big events. So you can do it battle points by just adding up their scores. And of course, we retained our system where you get 1,000 points for a win, 500 points for a tie, 0, and these are tournament points for a loss. And then you add in your battle points that you earn game by game. The reason that we do that is that someone who's got low point wins will never get passed by somebody with high point losses, right? Which can happen in a Swiss system. So the 1,000 to 500 is just to stratify people based on their win-loss-draw record. Mm-hmm. And when you choose your path to victory, if you're playing in a true Swiss system, like the LVL, we have 9 rounds if you go the distance. Most people play 6. But if you make the top 8, single elimination, 3 rounds to determine the champion, you can win by 1 point. And if you win all your games, you will win the tournament, period. Now, if you're at a tournament where there's not enough rounds to determine a true champion, the SoCal Open, the Bay Area Open are this way because there's too many people. We can't do 7 rounds or 8 rounds in 2 days. It's just not doable. So then you need to try and max out your score every game. So that is also another fun variable that comes into the equation. It depends on the format, right? Typically speaking, though, if you choose the correct path to victory, if you choose the correct secondary missions, and you can get them, you determine your own odds of winning the tournament, right? You're not going to get screwed by the mission because you're picking your mission. And I think that's super important for competitive play. And like you said, progressive scoring is critically important because it's just so much more fun and it's more fair, especially in 8th edition where things die like super fast.
This is what I say this, I'll say it 1,000 times, but one of the things I love about this game so much is that the board game, the state changes from round to round. It doesn't look the same on turn 2 as it does on turn 5.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things about our missions, which the downside to it, and we were transparent about this from the word go, is that there is a lot of bookkeeping. And if you're not used to it, it feels overwhelming because you're tracking stuff every player turn and game turn, right? So it takes a couple of games to get used to it. But once you get used to it, it's in the back of your mind. It's pretty easy. It becomes in your subconscious. You're not thinking about it. You're focused on tactics. But you get to track the ebb and flow of who's winning turn by turn. It's really, really fun, actually. You're like, oh, he got me. He's up on me on turn 1 and turn 2. I caught up turn 3. I passed him, but then he passed me. Oh, and it all comes down to turn 6. It's really fun to get that ebb and flow of the score changing. It doesn't just matter what happens on the last turn.
Oh, that's nice to hear. And so I can swing for the fences, and that's a perfectly legitimate way to play. Or I can just kind of take an army that I think will sneak victories in, the most victories in, and that's also a good way to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super duper important because you want people to bring the tricky, tactically complex armies that may not smash your face, but they'll win the mission. They should also have a chance at victory. And I think that's really important to encourage diversity in your lists.
That's pretty cool. I've got a gaming club and we're coming out there. Going to have a big representation from the Wrong Way kids playing in both Sigmar and on the 40K side.
Nice.
How big is the Sigmar stuff going? Not to sidetrack us, I still want to pick your brain more about 40K championship missions, but you guys are filling up on the Sigmar side, you said? Does it have the same, like path to victory type structure? Not the missions, of course, but can you play similarly? With
Sigmar, we are playing straight out of the General's Handbook because that's what the Sigmar community wants. The Age of Sigmar missions are actually freaking really good. I have some critiques like from a game, I don't know, not development, I guess game mechanics perspective, but in general, we took a lot of inspiration from the Age of Sigmar missions for the ITC Champions missions because they are so good. There's a couple that are a little wonky, but they fixed a lot of it in the General's Handbook too, or 2017. So the Age of Sigmar community they want to play the book missions, typically speaking. So that's what we're going to do. We have some modifications.
Then do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, our TO throws in some additional victory conditions like secondary style missions. And the reason that they do that is because the Age of Sigmar missions are great, but they're not the greatest for stratifying scores at a tournament.
The separation is key. I mean, you can't have 10 people tied at the end.
You can't just have 2, or it's not binary. There's 3. It's major, minor, loss, right? You need a little bit more than that at a tournament, especially at a bigger tournament. You need to have other points you can get just to stratify the field. Like you said, otherwise it's like you got your winner and then there's like 4 people in second, 8 people in third, 16 people in fourth, and you're like, that doesn't really work so well for a tournament structure. So we sprinkle in a little bit extra to earn more points just for that purpose.
Got it. I know you mentioned that you're going to be incorporating some of the chapter approved into the LVO structure. When is the cutoff date for codexes, rules, erratas, and everything else?
Well, as we all know, everything's coming out rapid fire, and it's pro and con. It's great that we're getting it so quickly, but from an event perspective, it can be a little frustrating. So we're going to probably do like a week out. We're going to cut it as close as possible because we know demons are coming early in the year. If there might be another one, but really we want to encompass a demon FAQ. If it does come close on the heels of the Codex, we want to be able to get that too. So that, I would say, theoretically is going to be the last thing to come in as the demon Codex, and then maybe also an FAQ if that does occur. So long as the timing works out, we're going to try and get it all in there.
I absolutely do not mind this rapid release schedule. I mean, we're barreling towards everything, or all the armies having stratagems and warlord traits and additional powers and stuff like that. I mean, attributes or whatever. And it's just going to be a better game when everyone gets it.
100%. And that's why, like, we've had a little bit of pushback. There's been a little friction when we've kind of pushed rules into our events at the last minute. And I do completely understand the frustration from a player perspective. Like, of course, we had Pajama Pants, who was already on the road, and then his list changed. That sucks. Like, no one enjoyed that. But when I talked to him, he's a good friend. He was like, yeah, he's like, I agree with all the changes. These are the timing just sucked for me. And I was like, dude.
Well, someone will always be impacted.
Yes. Yeah.
Period. You will, someone, I mean, the only thing I don't know what that threshold is. I think if, I have a number in my head, but I don't know what a real number is of what's the percent of people affected that you don't do it? What is the percent that you automatically incorporate some of this stuff? I mean, and of course it depends on what it is, but there's no getting around. Someone will always be impacted.
It will, right? Like it's a if you do, if you don't situation. Like you're going to people off regardless. And we've always taken the stance that we try to be more inclusive. And the quote unquote 30-day moratorium, that's just a partially observed tradition. That's not a rule. That's not not even considered etiquette, really. It's just something that sometimes happens, and it's a hangover from back when we used to get 2-3 codexes a year. Right? And if we did that, like at the SoCal Open, for example, 2 whole codexes would not have been playable at the event.
Well, think about it this way, too. If a Dark Eldar player got their codex, when they were waiting like 11 years on one, 28 days before your event.
And you're like, sorry, dude.
Yeah. You would have had to done it, So.
Yeah. And that's our attitude. And so we're going to try and get as much stuff in as possible and then kind of close it down, I think probably 7 days prior to the event. It's a little close, but with the rapid release schedule, we feel that that's the best choice.
I mean, if people can expect it. I mean, that's it. They just know it's coming. Don't be disappointed if something changes, or be disappointed but understand that it was coming, or just the way it is. Yeah.
And the decision is made for the greater good, right? It's to increase the experience for the most people. Let's be real. Like, raise your hand listening to this podcast right now if you stay on top of every single thing that comes out. I barely can, and this is my literal job. So, and I still make mistakes and forget stuff. It's like a new codex coming out, like especially like demons, which a lot of people are always unfamiliar with anyway. Even if you had a month, you probably wouldn't memorize the thing. It's going to be a learning experience.
Yeah, every AP on every weapon and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what matters. People are like, oh, that gun, I didn't know what it did. I mean, I think that's the biggest argument that I've ever heard. Or I guess biggest criticism. Argument's a bad term, but criticism of things is I didn't know what that weapon did, or I didn't know he had that stratagem. You probably didn't know he had it anyway. Or
exactly.
You wouldn't have known he had it anyway.
Exactly. And one of the first things I learned to be a good and effective competitive player back in 5th when I was just a tournament going machine before we did it as a job, I got in the habit, and in 5th you could actually memorize the game. Like that's why a lot of us remember it so fondly, is because you were a true master of the game.
3 books a year.
Yeah, because nothing. Yeah, right. You had so much time. But if I ever saw something across the table from me that I even was mildly didn't understand, I would just ask my opponent, "Hey, what does that do? Like, does it have anything? What's its trick? What's its shtick? What's the thing that it can do?"
Yeah, I've never seen that before. Why are you taking it?
And you just ask, and it's a neutral scenario, right? Because the game you're not mid swing; it's before the game has begun. So your opponent will usually be very forthcoming, and if they don't, that's truly bad sportsmanship. It's never happened to me.
Yeah,
right?
and well, if they're not explaining it well, you can just ask to see their codex. That is perfectly reasonable. And maybe tournament etiquette is something we should do a spot about, because there are more people, newer people that haven't been doing it for the last 20 years.
Oh yeah, tournaments are blowing up everywhere. We have buddies that haven't played in 5-6 years that are coming to the LVO. Like my high school gaming group, the guys I played 40k with in high school in the gym, hit me up. I haven't talked to them in 10 years. They're like, we're coming to the LVO. I was like, this is incredible, right? Like,
that's great.
Really, it's striking the right notes with people, and I think it's incredible.
It's okay to ask to see the codex. You're not doing anything wrong. You shouldn't put your opponent off. That's not a sportsmanship issue. You're cool. It's cool if you see their rules.
100%. 100%. Don't never be afraid to ask. Just always just be polite. Like, oh hey, what does that do? You mind if I look? Even if you're just questioning it a little bit, there's been times when I'm like, it's absolutely this, and I know my codex frontwards and backwards. Then you look and you're like, and I was wrong.
Yep.
You're like, oh wait, that was the 6th ed. Oh God, I'm getting my additions mixed up. It happens.
Yeah. So especially with all the damage things. I mean, we got some things that are damage 1 you expect to be damage 2, and there's a lot of, I don't want to say complexity, but there's what? I haven't counted up. How many weapons are there? Say 60 in every book, or something.
And some of them are like obscure too,
I don't know what a web gun does.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Spine fist or assault. What? It's not a big deal. Just ask.
Yeah,
especially when you're going over your opponent's list before the game begins, which you should do every single time. Just ask. Like, what's this guy do? Or he has what? He has 3 psychic powers and 2 denies? Oh, okay, cool.
Good times to ask is during deployment too, right? When they're putting it down, everyone's looking at that unit. Say, hey man, give me the elevator speech on this unit or whatever.
Yeah. What's the skinny on? I forgot. What does Aramon do again? Oh, okay, cool. What's his special rule? Got it. And you'll have a better play experience and you're more likely to be successful, because there's nothing worse than being on the table and it does what? As it like smashes your unit that you were hoping to win the game with.
It's 24 shots and it's neg 4 armor save.
What? Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that was that.
Okay. But that's kind of situation is going to happen even when you're the most prepared and you've studied as much as you can. On your 5th game of the day, you could be a little foggy. So anyway, it's cool to ask. No one cares. Yep. It's not even remotely a sportsmanship issue.
No, not at all.
So a week out, we're going to have at least 3 more codexes then is what we're kind of expecting, with Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Demons. That's the ones we know about. We've seen some articles on that. I think I'm resigned to bringing Blood Angels. So,
you better.
There's a few things, because you have to plan for the tournament and also getting there, right? So you got to look at the missions and you got to look at what fits in your army transport. Do you feel comfortable checking your bag? Are you driving? Are you going to carry it on? There's lots of complexities that go into picking what army you're taking to the tournament. And I think that's, you first want to look at missions, and you want to look at any type of rules erratas or FAQs or whatever that's going to change how things play, or just customs. I don't know how you guys do things there. I've got a great idea, but unless I familiarize myself with it, there's things that could come up as surprises. And I'm not saying they're going to lose me the game or whatever, but these are just things that I think it behooves me to look into and just get myself acquainted with the event.
Yeah, absolutely. The more preparation that you put into it, not only the better fun that you're going to have too.
But these resources are available on the site. Like you can go to LasVegasOpen.net, and all of your resources are available. I'm looking at the Google Docs right now. I've got the 8th edition guide, the format guidelines, the mission, and the champs all pulled up on my computer right now, studying them.
Yeah, we try to be as transparent as possible. And like I said, the missions are going to update again next week, and they're going to be relatively minor, and we'll see if there's anything else that needs to be done. If not, we're going to put the stamp of approval on that and leave them until the LVO, and then we'll have obviously a huge sample set to get more feedback. But there may be one more tweak in the end of or the beginning of December, but I'm probably going to say no, not. But what is on
But this is based on feedback, right? So this is based on people, like if people do have questions or think, you're soliciting the feedback. They can contact you if they notice something that's just too weird or maybe they don't understand how it works.
Oh yeah, please do. Please do. We've been soliciting feedback nonstop. And it's definitely a community-driven experience, right? Like the missions were not one person did it. It started out as a discussion between playtesters before the edition even came out. And then it was, amongst our teammates, and then to the larger community, and then based on the SoCal Open, which we had 140 people, 75% of them submitted feedback on the mission. So we got a lot of feedback and ideas.
Man, that's great. So the secondary missions or secondary objectives that you were talking about that people get to pick, are those the same each round? Or are they going to change from round to round? Will you publish a final mission pack, but like how soon out before the event?
Yeah, they are the same missions every round, and you can pick whichever ones make sense based on what your opponent has in their army. And the mission pack is up now. Like I said, there just might be some tweaks before we get to the LVO, but more or less, like 90%, what's there is what you're going to be playing.
That's great. Okay, I like what I'm hearing. This is allowing me to take a list that that I might enjoy playing, because sometimes, we do have to make list compromises when we're getting ready for a tournament. And I think that's part of the perception, is that everyone brings all these kind of face beater lists and they're not focused on the fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing too that I wanted to emphasize. The Las Vegas Open is definitely a big and competitive event. It's the biggest in the world for 40K championship singles style play, and it's one of the biggest for Age of Sigmar too. But the average person coming to the event is there to have a good time. Like, they may hope to win in their heart of hearts, but they probably don't expect to. What most people come to do is do the best they can with their faction and to have fun, right? Because we give away pretty lavish awards for the people who do the best with each faction. And a lot of people, that's what they're there for. They're there to have a good time, to do their best, but it's really only the top 10%, maybe 15% of the field that are there, that are like hope and plan to win. The average person coming to the event is more interested in having a good time.
Well, I mean, it is a tournament. I don't want to make it sound like anything else. You're playing to try to rack up wins, to compete in some capacity. Absolutely.
People are coming. It is a tournament. They're there to do the best they can. But different people define that differently. For one person, it may be, if I didn't win the event, I feel like I failed. But for a lot of people, it's, I'm here to do the best with my faction, right? Like, I'm here to be the best orc player.
And that's the season ender for the ITC scoring season, right?
It is. And it generates so many points that it creates tremendous movement in the rankings, which is super fun. And then the Sunday RTT, obviously on Sunday, for 40K, for people who did not make the top 8, there's a ton of different events on Sunday. That score will be your first score for the 2018 season. So you can finish and begin ITC season at the LVL, which is pretty fun.
That's pretty cool. Where I was going with a little bit of line of questioning before is that you can go and you can take things that are enjoyable and still actually get those wins. Like, it sounds like I could really look at the mission, use models that I want to play with, and then I have some kind of hand in my own fate, and I don't have to make too many list compromises. Maybe I got to take efficient things. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm still going to be able to have a good time, and win some. I think that's important. With what might be a fun army to play.
I agree 100%. Right now, my army, I'm playing my Footdar again, and it's a truly themed Bealtan Swordwind. I have one of each aspect warrior.
Oh, nice.
And I've been doing really well with it. I've only lost one game so far, not saying I'm the greatest player in the world, because I am not, or that it's an unbeatable army, because it's not, but I'm playing the way I want to play and doing well, and obviously I made my list so that it would be good in our missions, obviously, because that's all I ever play, right? So,
yeah.
And it works, right? Like, am I going to go set the world on fire and win every tournament? No. I'm going to win more than I lose, and I'm playing with a truly themed, lore-driven Eldar army.
Did you get the dice? Did you get all the specially Eldar dice?
No, I use FLG dice, even though in my last game I rolled Snake Eyes 3 times in one psychic phase.
Oh, I've got an anecdote where I killed Eldrad. This is back in, it might have been 4th edition. I killed him in 3 turns.
Which is like mathematically, like you could have won the lottery.
Right. Yeah, because you could ignore the injury, ignore the perils and that kind of stuff, but nope. And my opponents were stunned, like, what are you doing? I said, I'm putting Eldrad back in the box.
Yeah, it's so rare, right? Like, yeah, oh well. And everybody has stories like that. That's part of the fun and the frustration of playing dice games.
Yep. Oh my! And it made it matters worse. The guy I was playing against said he was like a statistician. I was like, oh yeah, what are the odds on that?
He's like, that breaks my brain.
Yeah, he didn't want me to roll 2 dice for twin link weapons.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's one of those where you have to roll and then pick it up and roll it again.
Yeah.
And a statistician
I follow whatever dice customs my opponent really wants. I mean, I have very few other than rerolling sideways dice, cog dice, or whatever. But if there's any kind of dice voodoo that my opponents want me to do, I'll probably comply.
I do too. I absolutely do too. Because I don't really care that much. But it's just like rolling 1 dice twice or 2 dice once is the exact same possible numbers that can pop up. Like, there's no difference.
It was fine. I did it, but anyway, it's very rare that you encounter something like that, but I prefer to go with the flow.
Yeah, some people have like, they have strong feelings about it, and it's just like, okay, I don't, so I'll do it your way. But
do it that's fine. Let's just play this game. Oh well, Eldrad's dead, let's run the math on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't the same as twin linked, or whatever, but it didn't have a twin link brain. That would have really worked out for me.
Yeah, I know it is what it is, and that's part of the fun of it.
But I like what you're saying though with the direction that you're going with your list. Playing, I mean, obviously you're playing these missions, and that it's possible for everyone to do that. You know, I think that's really good. And then how do you prize out? Because you said you award best faction. I think that's one of the things you guys do is award best faction at the event.
Yeah, we do, and we give out lavish prize support at the LVO, like tens and tens of thousands, multiple tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
God, that's great. I love giving stuff away.
Yeah, and like the ITC champion last year, Matt Root walked away with a $3,500 check. He was the overall ITC champion. Brett Perkins, who won the 40k championship, he got I can't even remember how much stuff he got, but the crown jewel was a Knight Porphyrion from Forge World, the one that's almost Titan size.
Oh, the giant one with like the two cannons, like the big AgMech super thing or whatever.
Yeah, and that was one of the things he got. I can't even remember all the other stuff. And then we hand out trophies for the person who does the best with each faction for the event. And then, of course, since it's the end of the ITC season, we also recognize the champions for each faction. And if they're not there because they're in another country, we had a bunch of Aussies and a Polish gentleman took top spots in ITC spots. We send them their trophy, but they get announced on the live stream, and there's a lot of fanfare. And for the majority of people that come, that's what they're there for, is to try and do the best with their faction. That's the motivator. So it's exciting stuff. I really can't wait. And then as you and I have talked about, the ITC hobby track is well underway. And we're hoping to have some exciting news about that soon, which would be the same thing as we do for competitive play, but tracking hobby accolades. Like you could go to events and earn points for having a beautiful army.
That's really cool. Since we've been talking about that, there's been a lot of interest. People have been, kind of coming out of nowhere. It's like, hey man, I want to get in on this. When can I start, getting my pictures up or whatever?
Yeah, you were a part of helping make it go, right? I remember you and I talked about it last year. And we've been working on it, but there's a lot of like
you can't just wave a wand. Yeah, no. There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. I think everyone is very understanding, but I think there's something they're looking forward to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be freaking awesome because a lot of people equate the ITC with like whack play or something, which is absolutely not what we're about. It's about building community. And I think
people have perceptions about tournaments, man. And if people are, ranking themselves on their tournament play, there's going to be this kind of perception. It's not true. I tell you, it's not true. We would not be going to these things, and we go to these things to have a good time and to meet people we would have not met otherwise, and then to almost get this. I mean, it's not a small community anymore, but it's been building for 15, 20 years, and you see the same people over and over again.
Yeah, that's why you go. If you have a competitive itch in you, you have that urge. Like, I can't play Tiddlywinks without trying to win. It's just the way you are. Yeah. So that's what gets you going in the first place, but it's the community that keeps you coming back, right? Like, you see your friends, like you and I see each other. We have all these funny stories over the years of us playing games and doing ridiculous shit. You always beating me, and you build this you get a lot of emotional investment into it because you have these shared experiences and you want to go see your friends.
And that's what it's about. It's not about taking away a plastic trophy at the end of the day. And maybe it is for some people. Obviously it is for some people, but that they are in the extreme minority.
Yeah. Like I said, the average person comes to have fun, which includes trying to do the best they can, but they're not heartbroken if they don't win. They're there to challenge themselves, have fun, make friends, drink some beers, or not. A lot of people don't actually drink beer. I say that a lot, but they're there just to have fun, and it takes some time away from the responsibilities of real life.
Okay, well, I hope we can catch up again, hopefully pretty soon as I start to refine my list and figure out what I want to take. I want to run strategies by you and, of course, keep up to date on the tournament itself.
Absolutely, and I will say one thing, buddy. I know that you are a avid Blood Angels player, and as we said on Signals, you're going to be happy. I think you're going to be stoked.
I am exceedingly hopeful. And number one, I just love moving those models around. And I think I'm going to play that regardless, no matter what happens. But while I've got you, though, you also have a store. You got Frontline Gaming.
We do. And actually right now, we have a sale going. Like we sell Games Workshop product at a discount every day in our web cart at store.frontlinegaming.org. And we have free shipping within the continental United States for orders $99 and up. But we also manufacture gaming mats, FLG mats, and we make terrain specifically for 40K and soon-to-be Age of Sigmar tournaments as well. but you can use them for any event, any game system. And that's the ITC Terrain Series. It's what you see at our events. But we have a big sale going on right now, our holiday sale. We are selling all FLG mats at 25% off through Cyber Monday, the 27th of November.
That's big.
It's great, right? And again, free shipping at $99 within the continental United States. If you've had your eye on a mat or two, in most instances, if you buy two, you're getting free shipping also. So jump on over to store.frontlinegaming.org if interested, and maybe pick up some mats, some terrain.
Well, you guys have new designs. Even if someone got one a couple of years ago, you have new designs right now that they may not have seen.
I think we're over 100 unique designs at this point. It's like ridiculous. We have so many different designs, and we have a ton more that we're developing right now. So,
and it's not just for 40K either. You have other dimensions for other games.
We make official War Machine and Hordes mats. We just came out with a Grimkin one for the Grimkin faction. We have a Bocage mat that's perfect for like bolt action or Flames of War. We have them scaled to 15 and 28 millimeter. We have mats to be great for Infinity, for X-Wing, for Armada. We're just going to be rolling out 6x3 mats for Armada for Rune Wars. We pretty much any game. We've got something cool for your gaming surface. If people want to come and check it out.
It's really nice. I mean, everyone says that the figures just slide across it, but it's more than that. Like you don't get the extreme click clack of the dice. It just kind of feels real smooth, when you're playing.
Yeah, it's easy, right? You roll it out, put it down, put your train on, awesome. Roll it back up, put it in the bag, put it in your closet or whatever, and it's out of the way. And it's just easy. If you want to go play at your friend's house, just take it with you. There's a reason why they've just blown everything else away. It's just they're just a better product, right? For gaming. Nothing in my opinion beats a truly badass custom table that's 3-dimensional, but that's not mobile. It's not, realistic for a game store or for a tournament in most circumstances. So,
well, you can easily switch it out. I mean, if you've got multiple ones, you could change the whole look of your table in a minute and a half.
Yeah, and we have themed sets of terrains that match specific mats. They fit. There's graphics on the mat that you build a piece of ITC terrain. It fits in that graphic and it fits the narrative of the table. So it's really cool. And we're coming out with more and more sets of themed terrain and mats that's like all in one. You can have whatever the case may be, a destroyed city. Some of the new ones that we have are really popular. Like we have an orc themed village that you could put on any kind of a mat and paint it to match, and it looks really, really cool.
Well, check that out right now. The sale goes on. When does it start?
It's going on from now, from the time that people are hearing this, through November 27th. So
it's going on right now. Like they could get it like today. We're recording this on a Friday.
Yep, it is going right now through the 27th. So it's a tight timeline, but it's such a big discount that we can only do it for so long.
Well, too, and I think if people want to get their stuff, they better order it as soon as they can.
Yes, I would recommend sooner than later.
If you're getting an FLG mat, it makes a great holiday gift.
Yeah, it sure does. And then we do have bundles, too, that come at a discount if you get the ITC set and mat. The whole thing will almost always be free shipping because it's over the $99, and it's at a discount of buying everything separately. So that's another thing people might want to check out.
Dude, that's awesome. I know I'm a big believer in the products. I mean, the terrain especially is so important in 8th edition. And you guys almost have. I mean, it takes no time at all to put these things together. I mean, they're cut out of wood, a little bit of wood glue. I find it very satisfying to work with wood glue.
It is. It's fun. You can use super glue too, but wood glue is definitely stronger. And they're easy to build. We made them for ourselves for tournaments, and they were like, "Hey, we should sell this. Like, people will like this." And it's meant to be sturdy, easy to put together, easy to paint, and very, very functional for a game of 40K or War Machine or whatever the heck you're doing.
And mats are durable. I've been using them since they first came out, and I'm a believer in them, and I really like the new designs.
Thank you very much.
Well, dude, again, I hope I can catch up with you again as we move closer to the event, just to kind of keep up to date and let people know what's going on, what they can expect. I want to know when you sell out for some of these things. I want to know if anything new gets planned, and, I want to run list ideas off you in the future.
Please do, man. I'm always here.
Dude, man, have a good rest of your day.
You too, brother.
FTN is brought to you by Bell of Lost Souls. Check out www.bols.org for the best daily hobby articles on the web.
Hey everybody, welcome to another special segment of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined today by traveling tournament player Val Heffelfinger.
Blowing in that wind. How you doing, Paul?
Yo, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. I listen to a lot of actually qualified players in this spot. We had the Symes from Warhammer TV in here a little while ago. My man Reese Reubens in this place. I'm humbled to be in this interlude interview section of the show.
The seat is still warm from where Reese was here earlier.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you for joining me. Why I wanted to have you on the show is that you recently came to my tournament in Warzone Atlanta, and you were playing Orcs.
Yes, sir.
Which if you listen to the internet, people say the Orcs are not good.
Well, I mean, let's be a little more optimistic, internet.
I
think they got a lot of moves, and I think it just depends on also the matchups they get. They do need some help, no doubt.
Well, there's some sleeper lists out there, but you brought even something I had never even considered, and I thought that was worth bringing you on to talk about because we're both going to a big tournament here pretty soon. That's the LVO.
Heck yeah. Yes.
So I thought just with that outside of the box thinking that you obviously possess, we could talk a little bit about how you go about choosing an army and how you would go about approaching these ITC championship missions.
Absolutely. The ITC championship missions, first and foremost, I know you said you've had a little bit of chances to warm up with them. I've got an RTT coming up. I'm going to get some good practice on. So I have been thinking a lot about them, not a lot of in the field experience. But I do love them. I think they're a really exciting sort of race to the finish vibe to them. What do you think of them so far?
I do like it. I like how that there is, in a lot of cases, fixed objective placement, which that's one less thing you have to think about. It's kind of an equalizer for both opponents. That's not where you have to focus your attention on winning the game. You can actually, it's just on playing the game.
Yep.
And I like that aspect of it. The scoring seems fairly straightforward, and I like how that there are bonus points wrapped into the missions themselves that it seems like it'd be difficult for everyone to game towards. To me right now, I'm looking at it as it seems like it will be difficult to always count on making that bonus point, which is kind of the nature of what a bonus point should be, I think.
Yeah, and looking at the secondaries, the bonus points are definitely they're going to be very situational, and I don't know if you'd necessarily build to do well at them. One thing, though, that is a really strong consideration is building to be defensive on the secondary missions. I have seen people boast about building lists that, are, barely give any of this stuff up. What do you think? Do you think that you'll be designing in that direction and make yourself very durable against a lot of these options? I
think you have to be aware of it. I mean, when you are playing in a tournament with 500 other people, and that's not even exaggeration. You're playing in a tournament that it just has a massive roster of individuals. You have to be focused on separation of scoring if you plan on winning.
Yes. Yeah, the other thing too about the LVO is that they're all people who know what they're doing. I mean, I don't want to overstate it because it's an absolute blast. I know you haven't had a chance to get out there yet, but I played last year. I think, in my first, 4 games or 3 games or whatever, my first one, I was randomly paired against a guy who I thought was just a nice dude from Australia. Turns out he's one of their biggest tournament organizers down there. He runs a website called Objective Secured. I played the top Tyranid player. I played the top Space Marines player. And these are my first games, so you do have to be ready for people who know what they're doing. So yeah, because I'm thinking one of my favorite tricks at Warzone was something I called the Golden Grot, which was I basically made my Warlord. Given that I have an index, not a codex, I made my Warlord a Grot gunner off of one of my custom mega cannons, so that way he was very hard to target and easy for me to hide him. And so that was an active call to protect the 2 points that Warzone gave for killing the Warlord. And I think that's probably where I'm going to start on these missions, is thinking about how can I be defensive just with my selection. So that's hard to be. Hard to give up those secondaries.
I think that's a good tip because you are. Now, I know this is just after my conversation a little while ago, is that if you win all your games, if you just win all 9 games, then you're winning the tournament.
At LVL?
At LVO.
Yes, it's set up. That's what, yeah, because it's 9 games. So there would be a natural winner. They have a cool hybrid, the way that they're doing their pairings now. So essentially, they've always done a win-loss format on their tournaments, ITC recommended style. I mean, you could do battle points if you wanted, but it is win-loss. But now it's say the winner gets 1,000 points, and let's say they scored 20 points in the scenario, they're going to book 1,020. So you're now ranking yourself against all the other one-win players. And maybe and then so at the end of the day, there will be someone who has probably a perfect record, and then also, the most amount of battle points. So I think it's a cooler way. Whereas before it was all win-loss. So like if you had a big RTT and it was just 3 rounds, you sometimes would have 2 undefeated people and no clear winner.
I like the way they're doing it, but I'm kind of steeping myself in that, in the information right now, because as of not going and not playing before, I feel like I've got a good handle on the concept. You go and you try to win, and if you can't win big, you try to squeak out a win, and if that doesn't happen, you still slug in it. You get as many battle points as you can, to hopefully continue to work your way into the top 16 spots, top 8 spots, and then hope for a miracle, I guess, maybe. But otherwise,
You're definitely going for that miracle.
Well,
I mean, even the great players. I mean, this is going to be probably a 500-person field. So, I mean, even if you're really good, you're going to need some breaks to get into that top 8.
Saving those command points for that wins that exact break last period.
Actually, command points are cumulative, so you save them all from the last game.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That'd be kind of neat. It's a terrible idea. Let's not do that.
Oh, but I'm getting myself acquainted with just the mindset, and this is something that I think it's going to be a good exercise, and I want to talk to definitely folks that have been there, and that have experience with the whole competition in the ITC, because that's something that I don't have a whole lot of experience with their setup and format. I like it. I think it's great, but that's not what I play casually.
Well, one of the things to appreciate, I mean, last year, they have what have become called the combined arms missions, which were a little bit tweaked from the previous year. But, sort of those ITC missions were chestnuts by last year's LVO. They were well established. Guys who played in that, sort of West Coast scene where there's lots of tournaments and lots of big tournaments, they knew those missions inside and out. Really, right now, there's one major event that's happened that's used this format, the SoCal Open. Really great reviews on the missions, but you don't have people who've sort of played these things in competition over and over and over and over again. And certainly no one will have a massive advantage on the missions. Compared to the way it was last year, when some people legitimately would have played.
I'd played a year,
dozens, hundreds of times. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a nice leveling factor too. The other thing that's nice is that the nuance of these missions is really going to be based on your opponent and how you choose your secondaries, which is a wonderful mechanic, I think. And then just the general flow of the game is always roughly the same. You've got to you've got to kill something, and then you got to get your guys to stand on the chips, as Mr. Horton Downton would say. So it's pretty straightforward what your objectives are, and it should be easy enough to keep your head straight and know what you need to do.
So in these missions, though, you do choose your own secondaries, and that is something that your opponent also chooses theirs. They choose the ones that they think they're good. Well, I guess one chooses the ones they think they're going to be easier to achieve.
Yeah, the ones that are the most achievable for them. Yeah, versus your particular army.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about. So if you're list building, you look at what are the various requirements for the secondaries, and you probably want to see how vulnerable you are on it. It's sort of like, to make a really simplistic example of it, it's like if every mission can be kill points. Would you run a Gladius? Probably not. So, you probably want to, make sure that your list is balanced enough to be able to deal with these different secondaries and not be super vulnerable to them. They'll also hopefully catch some of the weird scenarios. Like, I think they discovered that Imperial Guard tank commander gave up a tremendous amount of points because it was like big game hunter, Kingslayer and all these other things at the same time. So, or like a Grey Knight Grandmaster in a baby carrier. What are those called?
The Dread Knight Grandmaster.
Dread Knight Grandma. Yeah, that thing gave up a tremendous amount of points, just the way it was set up originally. I think, Reese maybe already talked about it, but I think they'll probably tweak the missions.
I love the Grandmaster in Dread Knight armor.
Oh, he's wonderful. He's beautiful.
I mean, it's amazing. Just such, for a while I was running an index guard list paired with Grey Knights.
Yep.
And the reason I do that is because I had some strike squads that would be able to come down and get objectives or harass my enemy or just roast demons.
Or just astral aim from behind a barricade and shoot 40 times at whatever chaff's in front of them. Yeah, they're amazing. I love
they are good. And then just that Grandmaster being able to just it's good. I mean, of course, I'm pairing it up with Manticores and Wyverns and stuff. So most things seem better.
That's correct.
I don't know. I don't think that's what I'll take, though, to the LVO, because you have to be aware of like a travel-friendly army, and I don't know that the guard list.
Define a travel-friendly army, Paul.
Well, things that easily fit in a carry-on, like in the overhead compartment.
You don't check. You wouldn't check, huh?
I don't know that I wouldn't check. But I hear so many horror stories. Like the army would have. I think that would have to I would have to feel like that was my only path to victory for me to want to check my army.
Maybe I'm screwing myself, and maybe I'll need to make sure I have a backup army on the ground in Vegas. But I only ever check my armies. In fact, I bring the biggest luggage I possibly can. I put I don't know if I'm allowed to plug them, but a Battle Foam 720 in like a giant piece of hard case luggage, and I check every time. I've done that 4 times. So yeah, I bring big armies if I want to.
Yeah, no, I mean that's one way to do it. I've also heard of people mailing their armies.
That seems crazier to me.
Yeah, well, you FedEx it, then it's a couple of days. They're supposed to be careful with it.
I don't know, man.
Look, we're talking about our own rituals here.
Yes, sorry. But what
I've not done the mailing, but I can see that that's an option. I also see what you're talking about as an option. I like to kind of, I don't know, if I know that that's my only one that I'm going to be using over the weekend, I kind of like to look at it and make sure that nothing too crazy happens.
That's fair. And maybe you've got like a really spiky Tyranid or Dark Eldar army, and you don't want that thing tumbling and bumbling.
I think I've committed to playing Blood Angels anyway at this point.
Whatever. You can just throw those in a sack, throw it over your shoulder.
Well, right. I could, if I'm playing out of the index, I could just hold like my army in both hands because it's like 5 Sanguinary Guard and 6.5 Death Company.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun boarding the flight to Vegas though, and just seeing the 15 bachelor parties and then just the 7 or 8 shifty-eyed looking nerds also just sort of sprinkled in there with their gingerly carried carry-ons. It's a sight to behold.
I mean, I can't wait to just be in the room with that many 40k gamers in the first round of the tournament rolling dice. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's cool, and it's all done on a nap. Like, I mean, it's neat. I mean, I find the whole operation is something that's really awesome. And they got a media center. Everyone has a podcast. I mean, you will not be special there, Paul.
What?
When I was checking in, honest to God, I was checking in to Bally's day one. I was overhearing the conversations around me. There were 2 podcasters in front of me and 3 behind me. 2 of them were Life After the Cover Save, Robo Ed and you know what I'm saying. Anyway, everyone has a podcast. You're not special. I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
And I borrow people's podcasts.
There you go. I'm going to try to be special when I'm out there.
Okay, you're special.
I know. I'm actually going to try to actually just play the game. And of course, I'll do some media stuff. I mean, you can't not being around it. I mean, even at Adepticon, I'm going to do media stuff. But I am going to try to just enjoy being a tournament gamer when I'm out there.
It's just, it's really neat to me because I really legitimately find the fact that there's a media attached to this game, specifically the competitive part of it. And it's a real trip to me to see everyone out there. Like Mini Wargaming was there last year. Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics made it out there. Warhammer TV, of course, is there. So like, there's There's just a lot of those personalities you watch on YouTube or you listen to on podcasts, and they're all there, and they're all just normal people, and they're freaking out because everyone knows who they are for some reason. So it's a cool time in that way.
So back to list design, though, because, we talked about, insulating yourself from the secondaries, but the primaries are also, with some of the stuff being progressive objectives or killing more than your opponent or, being on more objectives. How do you approach that? Do you think that one of those goals is easier to attain than the other? And either killing more or being on more objectives. And what do you think the best strategy to play towards is?
I think, when you look at the various scenarios, there are differing amount of objectives up for grabs. I think that's one first thing to look at. So some will favor objective holding and some will favor killing stuff just by that definition alone. So you can't be all in on one versus the other. But I think standard competitive list building chestnut like resiliency and mobility, that tends to drive what makes the best choices in competitive lists, regardless of format.
So let's call that
can
a
it survive?
Brick. Yeah, well, let's call it, a mobile brick, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
How many mobile bricks actually exist in the game right now?
Well, a unit of orc boys in front of a weird boy can be anywhere it needs to be.
What are you talking about with the jump?
Yeah, with the jump. That's one of my favorite things about orcs is that they seem really slow, but they're actually tremendously nimble. They can be where they need to be. And a giant squig parked in the middle of the board has a 10-inch move.
Your giant squig was hard not to notice as you're walking by the table with the squig off, I guess.
Well, he's a gargantuan squiggoth named Peaches. He's tough to miss. That is a really wonderful. It does two things. It's a bit of a MacGuffin, so people are always obsessed with it. So they think they need to kill it, which is actually probably not that untrue. But it also is great for me for board presence. So I generally will either put that dead center or shade it to the side that I feel I need to dominate the most, and then redeploy around it as need be.
I refer to things like that as bully units. Is that the way you see it too? You really can shift people's strategy just because it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I can shift my strategy by either leaving it out on its own or doubling down on where it is. One thing though that I've had luck with running that list is that I haven't run into kill shot. I haven't run into 3 predators, hitting it on 2s, wounding it on 2s, rolling d6 damage against it.
That thing that stratagem is unfair.
It tremendously
I'm saying
unfair.
It tongue in cheek. It's brutal. It's brutal.
It's mean. It's mean against those big model things. And I think something in a meta like the LVL, where people are going to be geared up to be able to take out a Magnus in one go, to be able to take out a Mortarion. In fact, I figured Peaches was a liability coming into Warzone. The thing is, everyone brought Magnus or Mortarion or Super Chicken. No one seemed to bring the las cannons, which was great for me. So I was able to run around it with a little bit more freedom. But a big model has the downside of being able to get shot in the face real easy.
I do think you have to be prepared to take out Magnus and Mortarion in turn 1. Chaos is popular. Those models are gorgeous. Yeah. So people are going to want to play with them.
And they're very good.
And they're good.
Yes. Yeah. Mortarion, to me especially, Mortarion is just very good.
Everything. The model almost paints itself too. This detail is so crisp, so well defined. You have no trouble.
One of my favorite thing about, and this is again, we're not doing a very good job of talking about mission design, but I will say that I found that when Magnus dropped, and then the exact same thing happened when Mortarion dropped, everyone on the internet talking about how ugly it is and how bad the paint job is, and they're both classic models now. They're timeless models. Everyone loves them. Everyone owns one. And, I found that the initial internet gut reaction was just really ridiculous.
The internet will always have an opinion.
Yes. And it's usually just the worst. Stop being the worst internet.
Well, yeah, we're still on topic, though, because you have to account for these models. So, okay, and I mean that in all seriousness because, great, okay, I've planned to sit on objectives, and I've planned to try to kill a couple more units than my opponent. Oh, wait, I just got ran over by Magnus.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do Magnus and Mortarion have like what are some of their fancier keywords? Do they have They're not Titanic.
They're not Titanic. No, they're Demon,
like
Heretic Astartes. They've got the real key is the Heretic Astartes because you can warp time them. So
yes.
that is a problem.
So well, I'm just looking at secondaries on them. You know, they're gonna be probably giving up a big game hunter point or two. Yeah, and then if one of them is, I mean, is there much benefit to having one of them as the warlord?
You can get the 6+ Feel No Pain on Magnus if you take it out of the
out of the index.
Book. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's right. He's an index character. That's really funny.
Yeah. Mortarion has his own warlord trait.
Yeah, you're actually probably not giving up that much, and I might be a little too off the cuff, but you know, it's maybe a point or two on secondaries for acing a Magnus or a Mortarion. So that's not so bad. They're not liabilities in a person's list, for example. If the big squig under these rules dies, it's giving up almost. It would almost get max out my opponent's big game hunter alone.
But do you think that that's a liability in that case, or does its benefits outweigh that?
I'll have to figure that out. Luckily, I have an RTT coming up, so I will be bringing the squig.
Well, I mean, just at base level. I mean, to me, that seems like it would be a big liability. I would steer away from that just off of what you just said.
However, I mean, there are other things too that are liability-ish in orc lists that work not too well with these secondaries. One, big units. Two, characters, both of which have juicy secondaries to choose from. The squig, would be Titan Slayer and Big Game Hunter. I mean, if I were to take my Warzone Atlanta list and just plop it down into this format, I'm vulnerable to just about every single secondary. So maybe that in itself, maybe that's something I can use to play against, is bait my opponent out to picking something they think is easy, and then play the game to make it hard for them.
That's a wicked dance right there. Yeah, I mean, it's a gamble. But I mean, to me, again, this is just surface level. This is not, at least my initial impressions anyway. I hope to get deeper and deeper with every couple of weeks as I refine my list and get more well versed in the missions. But it seems like you're going to encounter last cannons, you're going to encounter kill shot, especially over the course of 9 games. And how I try to counsel people, and this is 7th edition advice, you know, and earlier, maybe it holds true here, is that you need your list to help get you through those later rounds. You can use your skill to hopefully get through the early rounds, but you really have to plan to counter what you're going to face in round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
You know, it's interesting, Paul. I always thought of it as the other way around. I don't mean it. I hate to be contradictory, but I've always thought of it. Because I always thought of it because I feel like, I think everyone sort of says a prayer coming into a tournament, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but you're hoping to be matched up against someone who's bringing his dudes, you know, like his tactical squads with mixed heavy weapons. You know, you want that guy, and your list, just the matchup that you present makes the game very, very difficult for that kind of an opponent. And you're kind of hoping for that. And that's what I actually called the 40K glass ceiling, which is for me, it's usually game 3. Game 3, I'm usually at my skill level or, you know, over my head. And Warzone came in game 4, but like, to me, it's that at that point, that's when it's not about the list anymore. Everyone's got a good list. You're both running something super efficient. You both got moves. You both have tricks. That's when I think player skill carries the day.
There you go. I mean, that is, I think that player skill is a huge factor. I just mean that you really need an optimized list to fight these other optimized lists.
Oh yeah, but I think like that but that's just table stakes at that point. You know,
okay.
if you're not, you know, that optimized list is what gets you to that point, because you're just going to roll up, you know, the lists that don't have it. But when it's, you know, immovable force versus unstoppable object or whatever, you know, unstoppable force versus immovable object, that's when, you know, player skill happens, and that's when old Val Heffelfinger usually folds up into a cheap card table.
You heard it here, Internet. Peaches is coming to LVO.
Peaches, he's going to the RTT. We'll see if he goes to the LVO. I'd be hard pressed not to bring Peaches. He's a badass.
Oh, it's a great looking model too. I mean, I'm not committing you to anything at this point. We are early enough to where lots can happen. I mean, we got chapter approved coming out sometime soon.
Holy Hannah! I mean, anyone who's upset about anything in 40k needs to just, if you're really mad right now for whatever reason, I don't know why you're mad. Maybe you're mad about 40k. Stop being mad. Do something else for like 3 weeks. What are we looking at? 4 weeks?
Some small amount of time.
Some grand scheme of things, insignificant amount of time. The whole game is about to be rebalanced. Okay, so all these like really annoying flip back and forths we've been doing in the indexes and in our codexes, that back sheet. Oh God, why do they set up our books like this? It's so annoying. Well, it's so that this can happen. It's so that Chapter Proof can come out and change how 40k works, top to bottom.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It's nuts. It's really cool, and I'm so hopeful for the orcs because really I'd say probably half of the models the orcs have, and a lot of their cool stuff too, like Def Coptas, Battle Wagons, the Stompa. All these things, they're not playable because they're just not point sufficient. They're not even close.
Yeah.
They suck because of how expensive they are. So if that number comes down, the orcs suddenly have so much more play, and the same thing will happen for other armies. Like Grey Knights. I think Grey Knights would be an example.
We were talking a little bit in the pre-show about sometimes taking units in your codex just to give you an advantage in the game because you can reliably know you're going to encounter things that they are good at dealing with. Where they may not be very point efficient, but they are what you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
sometimes you just,
So even if that doesn't change, like as far as a point efficiency on them, I think I think that's an important point, important thing to note in the conversation is that not every army is the best at every job, and some other units just kind of give context to other units. But you can ignore that a bit when you're designing a list for a tournament because you're going to have to do things. Like, for instance, if you know you're going to encounter something that needs 6 las cannons, you take the only thing in your army that's equivalent to 6 las cannons.
Yeah, or that can have that kind of damage output, or what's going to do that the best for you. Yeah.
Back in 3rd edition or whatever, it might have been early 4th or whatever, Necron monoliths were very popular. You were going to encounter one in every tournament, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
When was the Gargantuan Squiggoth meta? What period of time was that?
That might have been late 3rd, when you could have quite literally its foot in a bush, like just a piece of stick-on grass tufts, and it would get a cover save. Yeah,
that's not so bad. I'd take that.
Yeah,
maybe the big squig meta is coming. Maybe it's January 20.
It could be. 2018. Well, what I'm saying is that big monolith. I wanted something and no matter what army I played, I needed to be able to do a wound to it to get a damage result on it reliably every turn. And so I had to, whatever I played, I had to take whatever could do that as part of my army.
I think, I think to wheel that into some tropes of list design. I think when you read a lot of good list building articles from a competitive perspective, they'll talk about, what are the things that the list has to be able to do. And I don't think these things necessarily change, because it's the ITC mission. But just being able to take big chunks out of big tough models, I think is a key essential thing. Can you ace a Magnus or a Mortarion in turn 1? Are you able to screen your equivalent model? Like, are you able to keep the big Gribblies off of your most important units? Are you able to move? Can you deal mortal wound myself? Can I kill a screen at range? That's huge. You don't want to charge, a screen. So you need to be able to kill the conscripts from a distance, or whatever the heck else is out in front of an army. So that's I think those are kind of, for me, where I'm starting from. And I'm always looking to see, okay, what role in my army are those units playing? Like, if you look at an orc boy, he can play a number of those different roles. I screen with orc boys. So one of my orc boys units in my list are earmarked to die, straight up. The other thing is although it's not killing them at range, I do use them to go out and clear out chaff. I use them just to juice up my weird boys because, I can get my super smites off. So like those sort of linchpin models, if you've got a unit in your army, it's got to have a job. You got to think like Bill Belichick here.
I like that what you said, everything has to have a job. It's very important. And while you were talking about that, I was thinking about the whole mortal wound generator thing. I think those are very important. And I think you're going to see a lot of winning lists have some amount of people that can kick out mortal wounds. I don't know what the magic number is there, though.
Yeah, exactly. I think mortal wounds right now come significantly from smite, and we're going to have to see what happens with smite. Pure speculation right now. I don't know. Maybe they'll give it a rule of 3 or something, or I'm kind of rooting for it to be harder to cast.
That's what I'm pulling for, is that it gets harder and harder to cast,
because that is not a problem for orcs to deal with, because our weird boys, their brains explode because they get so excited about casting smite. So I'm not worried about that. So that kind of a nerf is fine with me. That's why I'm rooting for it.
There you go, man.
Self-interest, Paul.
No, it's our look. I'm asking you your opinion, so it's fine.
So I think really smite spam being able to deal mortal wounds is one side of the coin, but I think what's really screwing people, and something that has been really slow to be picked up on, and you can see it in the hatred of conscripts, is the idea of screening units, and how resistant I think a lot of players seem to be to that is a fundamental must thing. You have to have stuff that's out in front of your important stuff. They
can suck down 7 smites before it goes away.
Yeah, can eat a smite, can eat a charge, because first turn charges are a thing. They're just, you need stuff in front of your other stuff. Like it is a minimum. You must do it. There's just no way around it. You have to do it. If you look at, like, everyone was mind blown by, I don't know, did you see my personal hero, Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics? Did you see his Heat 1 GT winning list?
I did. Oh, yeah.
So if you've heard him talk about it, he goes on about it being cheesy and overpowered. Well, not really, actually. I think a lot of the competitive community kind of scoffed at it because it had a bunch of TAC Marines in it. But the point of the TAC Marines was that he could disembark them and throw them in front of his ass cannon Razorbacks, and line them out in front of, just throw them out as speed bumps to stop both smites and to stop chargers from getting contact to his tanks in the back line there being buffed by Gilliman. If you contact a gun line of tanks and they have to fall back, a lot of times it's going to cause them a lot of problems. So it was very important for him to be able to have those units that could pop out and just be a speed bump and be annoying, or go grab an objective, or do things that are super handy. People need to have those really, those chaff units. It's really essential.
Well, I think part of his list capitalized on forcing his opponents to make decisions, and that I think is what you always want to be. What you want to be doing is giving your opponent an opportunity to make bad decisions.
Oh yeah,
bad target priority. Moving one way when they should be moving another way. It's all. Anytime you can force an unforced error on your opponent or whatever. Yeah. That's,
I guess, the best way to do that is present actually dilemmas, 2 bad choices. I got to play, I think Mike Twitchell. I assume you've seen him.
I do. I played against him for many years.
I got the good fortune of playing him in my fourth match. I got to prep for him really hard. He was playing this really neat, sort of the 2 key units were both chaff units, really. They're Poxwalkers and Alpha Legion cultists.
Yeah, the Alpha Legion spawn go infinite combo.
But I mean, I can ignore one of those, and he can go in on either one, because Alpha Legion cultists on their own can be a bomb, can be buffed to do crazy things, or they can be turned into zombies and make an endless horde of dudes for him to just own the board with. And then, so his list presented me with kind of a damned if I did, damned if I didn't scenario. And it also was tremendously distracting because the core concept of that list was so overwhelming. I kind of forgot about the mission, and I was just obsessed with how do I defeat that list. And that's something that having a list that has a lot of tricks, say a big squig, the classic distraction Carnifex, whatever it might be, getting your opponent to not be thinking about the mission, to not be thinking about the 5 commandos I've thrown into the backfield to grab an objective that, maybe you're not thinking about right that second. You're thinking about the squig or something else.
Yeah, in your mind, you make the choice that you don't have time to deal with it. You've got to be doing something else.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas, it's really a MacGuffin. It's not really what you need to be worried about.
Yeah, so I think the big takeaways from this talk here is if you can find a way to insulate yourself from the secondaries, you're not giving up points. That's a good thing to consider. You have every competitive army you're going to see has some form of screening element to it. And if you can't do it, you better be able to beat it or not need it. Find a way that you don't need it. I think those are the big things. And then find a way to give your opponent failure points. opportunities to trip them up their own selves up.
Yeah, two bad choices, and hopefully both of them are not paying attention to the mission.
Oh, if we can get that lucky, that's it. Well, Val, I hope we can have this conversation again, maybe in a few weeks or so, as we are, because I think you're going to be probably thinking about your list in the same way that I might be as well, and this will be good to circle back up as we get closer.
Hey, Paul, if I haven't talked myself off the show, I'm always waiting for your call, sir.
Awesome, man. Well, have a good rest of your night.
You too. Nice chatting.
Forced Narrative is brought to you by Dicehead.com. www.dicehead.com. Games, hobby, supplies, and comics. They have it all.
Hey everybody, we are back. I'm still Paul. I'm joined today by Zach Becker from the London Grand Tournament.
Hey Paul, how are you?
Hey man, I'm glad we were able to connect. We spoke, I think maybe about this time last year when you were getting ready to launch, or at least announcing your tournament was already sold out.
Yeah, we seem to have strange timings for our chats. And normally I like to talk to the sort of the Warhammer press, if you like, in the lead up to tickets going on sale. But every time we seem to get to chat, it seems to be afterwards. So yeah, last year we were sold out by this time. This year got significantly more space. So while we've over doubled our size from last year, we still haven't quite sold out just yet.
People can find information on the tournament at lgtpresents.co.uk, and that takes you right to the homepage, London Grand Tournament, May 18th to the 20th, 2018. Tickets are on sale right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the name's a bit of a funny one. So London Grand Tournament's obviously our name, but the web address is meant to be sort of LGT Presents, and then you do / and then whatever event you're attending. So it ends up being LGT Presents, the 40k tournament, or the Age of Sigmar tournament.
I'm sure people can figure it out
it
when they get there.
Yeah.
To the site. But I'm doing a series on getting ready for tournaments. And so I thought it'd be great to work into this. Tell us about what's going on with your event, and then maybe give some tips to folks that are preparing for a tournament. It could be their first one, could just be their first one of the year, and sometimes it just doesn't hurt to get reminders about things that maybe you should do, even if you're an old hat at this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to talk, because one of the things that I've been sort of talking about quite a bit to my local gaming community that are coming to the event, but anyone else that gets in touch with me that is thinking about coming, is there's a significant change once you go from trying to win, say, a 50 or 100 man event to trying to win 100 plus. So we're at 300 plus people now. LVO's, I think, 550 odd. So there's a difference in the way you need to plan how you're going to approach the entire event when you start thinking about, okay, I want to win this thing. How do I do it? Because suddenly your list building has to change, and the way you play every game has to change. So I thought it'd be, pretty helpful if I talk about that sort of stuff. Because,
yeah, man. And that's a lot of people. It's a lot of people registered for the event right now. And this is, we're recording this on November 20th, 2017, and you've already got 300 registrants for a tournament happening in May.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were really pleased. We got over 300 in the first 2 weeks, and that's just for 40k. So the convention itself is about double the size of that. But the 40k event in particular, we're really pleased with.
You have other events going on there as well. What are some of the other events in case people are listening and they want to try out one of those instead of the big mega 40k tournament?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a 40k narrative event as well for the people that don't want to play in the GT. So that's at about sort of 50, 60 odd at the moment. Same with an Age of Sigmar GT. We've got some other quite interesting events that I think are going to be sort of set a precedent for the niche games going on. So we've got a massive Necromunda weekend event, which we're really pleased to be doing. Blood Bowl GT, we've got Inquisitor, Warmaster, Epic, all the old school Games Workshop games that there's still pockets of the community playing, that we're trying to sort of aggregate and bring them all together for sort of a once a year event. I think we've got about 20 odd events now, ranging from tabletop Mario Kart all the way through to 40k, which is quite a sort of a wide and deep set of games to be playing, but mostly it's Games Workshop current or historic games.
That's pretty impressive. And I like where you're framing the kind of the conversation before about how the mindset is different when you're competing against 30 people to 50 people to 100 people to 300 to 500 people. It really is. And as a tournament veteran myself, I do find that it's hard for me to transition to that. I try to always swing for the fences. I want to get max points every game, but you don't have to do that.
It really depends on the format, and I think that's the main point I was going to try and make today, which is it's not all events are the same. And the first thing that any prospective event winner needs to do is analyze the format of the event. So, Nova, 8 games is a sort of fundamental starting block to win or loss, and that's sort of how you have to do a beginning analysis on the tournament itself. So, LVO has the same sort of thing with a bracketed final day. We work on a very different basis, which is we only have 5 games in our GT. So your approach that you were just describing there, where you go to try to get max point in every game, is the default approach to a 5-game tournament, because when you get up to sort of 300 people, because there's going to be plenty of people that have won 5 games. We're talking probably 5 to 10 people will have won all their games. So realistically, what you need to do when you start getting these massive tournaments is not playing for the win. You've got to assume you're going to win. If you're a good enough player to be shooting to win a 300-person tournament, you've got to make that assumption. And then what you've got to do is analyze the secondaries and the tiebreakers and really try to play for those, because ultimately it will be those that determine who podiums and who wins. So I think that's sort of the advice I'd give to anyone that's maybe prepping for the LVO this year or is heading across the pond to the LGT. First things first is analyzing the format of the event, because, as I said, they're not all the same.
Not to put you on the spot here, but how many prize categories do you have for this tournament?
For this tournament, I think we've got probably over 20. We have everything from tournament champion and best general, which are the 2 sort of equal top prizes. I think your version of Renaissance Man is what we call tournament champion, but we heavily bias that in favor of quote unquote soft scores. So that's 50% gaming, 50% soft scores. But the best general category has also got first, second, and third. There's best general for each of the sort of macro factions, so Imperium and Eldari, etc., etc. We've got best sports, we've got best painted. One of my favorite ones is most thematic. So that's a judge's choice that can reward somebody that not necessarily painted their army best.
So that's purely subjective.
Well, there's 3 judges. The one's the head 40k tournament organizer one.
That's not a loaded question. I think that that could be a completely subjective category, and everyone would be fine with it.
Yeah, it is, and it's described that way. It's described as a judge's choice. So each judge may have their own subjective criteria they're making their nomination on the basis of. So there's a breadth of judges that have no agenda. So there's no bias there. But we have, some funny prizes. As we've got obviously the wooden spoon stuff. One of my favorites is most dapper gent, which is the person who comes to the event with the best sense of fashion and flair.
Is that on both days or only on Sunday?
That's over the whole tournament.
I'm out. I can't win that one.
We had one guy one year that turned up in a pirate outfit. Not because he was trying to be a cosplayer or anything, but just because he dresses like a pirate as a sort of day-to-day activity.
I'm back in it. I have a pirate outfit. I'm back in it.
Yeah. So, we're a tournament that has always started out being very heavy on prizes. We try to set a precedent.
With that many people, I think you definitely want to spread it around. And you want people to feel like they're still in it to play those games, even if they had a bad couple of rounds.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to be rewarded for doing something that is not necessarily going to win you the tournament. So we had strategic spot prizes in our first year where there was D guns everywhere. So whoever was the first person in each game that got sixed out by a D gun and had their Titan taken off the table, they always got a prize. So
that's good. That's a morale booster. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. First person whose warlord runs off the table and all that sort of stuff. So you have people competing basically to be rubbish, which is quite fun.
I like that a lot. So what is the caliber of armies that you're going to see here?
We're still 6 months away, so there's a lot of codexes to come out between now and then. You'll see a lot of Eldar, I'm sure. Sounds like I could have said the same thing 2 years ago, but
well, as far as like the hobby element, is this something that people show out for? Do they really bring the best?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have last year, I think every single person that was nominated for best painting would have won best painting at a smaller tournament. It was absolutely astounding. The guy that ended up winning had flown all the way from Hong Kong just for the event and had an entire army of converted demon princes. That was absolutely amazing. So yeah, the hobby standard is very high. We have quite strict minimum sort of base level painting criteria. So we don't just have 3 colors. It has to be 3 colors and it has to be finished. So we don't just say, minimum paint is do this, this, and this. We just say it has to be finished to a tabletop standard, which is, subjective. But then we also caveat that by saying, if you have to ask, is my army finished painted? Then the chances are you probably know the answer is no.
It makes such a difference. I mean, even when people are just walking around and casually observing other tables, when they're not playing their own games, you want them going home and telling their friends about all the cool painted armies they saw at the tournament. That's how you get more people.
Exactly. No, that's completely true. And, if you have a rubbish painted army, you don't even bother, and that's allowed in your event, then you could play 4 guys that don't like playing against unpainted armies. And they come away from the event and they say, I had a horrible time. I played against, this guy that had a really overpowered list that wasn't even bothered to be painted. So you've got to think about those guys, not about the guy who hasn't bothered to paint his army. You're thinking about his opponents.
Right. And even a poorly painted army, you can still tell when someone tried to paint their army, and that is respectable.
Exactly. Our criteria rewards effort rather than skill. There's only, out of all the painting, soft scores available, only, I think, 5 out of 60 points are, for actual, really high levels of skill. The other 55 can be achieved just by putting the effort in.
That's good. I think that's very encouraging and just helps. I mean, because but like I just said, you can tell when someone really tried to paint their army, and they need to feel empowered to bring it out and be proud of it.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in a sort of slightly strange situation now where we're getting quite a few people buying spectator tickets just to come along and watch that don't actually play yet. They're thinking, we've got intro games going on at the side, and maybe they're thinking about picking up the hobby. So it's really important, for us to show the hobby in its best light to them. But we also have, magazines like, we have the independent press sort of come. So last year we had Vice magazine turn up, take a bunch of photos at the event. Now, if they're turning up and they're seeing all these people playing with unpainted models, then in their magazine, that's how they're going to portray the hobby, which, isn't fair because most of us, do bother to do all the aspects of the hobby, even if it's not our favorite bits.
Yeah, very true, very true. I mean, I like that there's an emphasis there, and then I like that you mentioned that most of the points can be gotten just from the effort. Now, I think the person that just put in the effort needs to be will be realistic about the best painted award. That's a totally different thing. But when you're competing, I'm one of those people that paints for points.
Yeah, me too.
And I mean,
but there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm proud of what I accomplished, but I know, it has to be one of those weird days if I'm ever going to come away with the best painted prize.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's good. So what are the others? So how do you determine, is sportsmanship part of the scoring for what you're calling the tournament champion, not the best general? Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So best general is purely gaming, but the tournament champion, we have a same sort of basis for tournament for sportsman as we do for painting, which is, so long as you're not a horrible person, you're going to achieve 95% of the sportsmanship scores. So basically it works on, everyone gets awarded by default the majority of the sportsmanship points. And there's a very, very small number of points that are reserved and are only awarded to people that get nominated for best sports. However, if we receive 2 or more complaints about somebody's behavior, you lose all of your sportsmanship scores. And that's worth the same equivalent of a game victory. So the whole point is that, everyone has a bad game now and then. Some people just are sore losers and will vote you down on sportsmanship because they lost badly.
I do not like empowering the person that just lost to impact the victor. It sounds like you've got a system in place that catches that. And you're right, it doesn't happen twice in a row very often at all.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are smashing somebody to, completely off the table, and then you have a sportsmanship responsibility to maybe, crack some jokes here and there rather than just beating them as quickly as possible so you can go up to the bar. So, there's an element there of saying, well, if you're going to absolutely destroy your opponent, then, it's your job then to make sure they have a good time losing. There's
a bit of a social contract. I talk about this all the time on my show to where, you are 2 individuals that at the very base level are showing up to a game board and you want to both have a good time for the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, there'll only be one person at the event that achieves maximum sportsmanship scores, but I would imagine that out of the 350 odd we'll probably end up having, there'll probably be 345 that achieve 95% of the sportsmanship scores, and there'll be an unlucky, well, not unlucky, but there'll be an unfortunate 4 or so people that haven't been the nicest chaps while they've been playing. And
that'll be an interesting metric to track. Again, that whole lightning striking twice and a little bit of sour grapes, but then also a little bit of just desserts. So
yeah,
I mean, look at after the tournament.
An interesting sort of data point, if you like. What we found last year was that people didn't understand that there was benefit to complaining about your opponent's behavior if you genuinely had a bad game. So one of the complaints I had after the event, a week later, was somebody emailed me and said, I played this guy. He was horrible to play. And 3 of my friends did too, and they all had terrible games. Why did you get full sportsmanship score? I said, well, no one told the judges. This is the first time I've heard about it. So what this year I've really tried to emphasize that, if you have a bad game because of your opponent's behavior, and they're not being aggressive or anything that would cause them to be kicked out of the tournament, but they're just not a very nice sport, then you should go tell a judge, not to complain, but just to notify them. Otherwise, we can't track anything. So I've tried to make that point pretty clear this year as well.
That sounds cut and dry. That's pretty good. Okay, so, I mean, obviously this is a tournament people are going to be trying to win, so you're going to see lots of power list. I think the meta, and people, hate when you use that word to describe what I'm saying, but when the meta will be clearly defined by that point in time, because we should have all the codexes.
Yeah, well, we certainly have more than we have now.
Well, we're going to have a lot of codexes. But at least that we will have, I believe, all the major factions represented around that time. But just in case, what is the cutoff date for list design and submissions? Are you requiring people to submit their list?
Yeah, we are. So we have a cutoff date, which is basically midnight before the 1st of May, so the last day of April, which gives us basically 2 weeks and a bit to list check. I'll come back to list checking in a minute because I've been giving that some thought I'd like to share. But there are bases for codexes, and basically anything that will affect army composition is frozen on that day. So that includes codexes, rules releases, and quite importantly, errata. And I think one of the things that people have been experiencing this edition, which is a good thing in my mind, is the rapid release of FAQs and erratas after new source material is released. And there's no consensus yet about, whether or not it should be used after lists have been submitted, et cetera, et cetera. And to my mind, there needs to be a standard. So what I've done is I basically said errata and FAQ are fundamentally different things. They affect how you build an army, the legality of the army, and a host of other things. So if there's an FAQ that doesn't affect army composition or effectiveness that's released the day before the event, and it's purely a clarification, then that'll be in use. But errata won't be if it's released after the cutoff date, because that wouldn't be fair to people that either now have illegal lists or people that have now seen a bunch of lists and say, well, if they can change their list because it's illegal, can I change mine? Because that errata makes it more.
Well, now I need to compete against that, so I have to change. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a fair way of going about it. So cutoff date will be the last day of April.
Exactly.
I think that's generous. That's a good 2 weeks. Now you said something about list checking, and you had some ideas on that.
I mean, some of your listeners will be aware, but some of them won't be. But all the tournament organizers chat all the time to try to work out the best ways to do things and discuss the problems that we will have. And one that's been coming up perennially, but most recently after the BAO, was list checking, about how to effectively do it, because it's very easy to list check 30 lists in a couple of weeks before an event. Slightly harder to do 100, but still possible. But when you start getting up to sort of 300 or whatever, it becomes impossible to do, because you can't get enough list checkers to do it for free. It's not economical to pay them because it's such a lengthy time process, time-consuming activity to do. Because we're not just talking about scanning it to make sure everything's in the right slots, but you've got to check every individual point. You've got to check everything, all the upgrades have been paid for, et cetera, et cetera. So you really need codex specialists to be doing each of their own factions, and the whole process blows way out of proportion. But conversely, one of the things that the people that can't attend, that are on the internet, love to do the most is talk about the lists, to chat about the meta, have to say, and have a nice old moan at so many Dark Reapers on the table or whatever it is. So what we're doing is we've got a public Dropbox, a Google Drive, And on list submission day, all the lists will be uploaded in the standardized format onto that Google Drive. And then that link will be shared, not just to attendees, but to the general public. And then they'll be able to use the comment feature to basically identify mistakes and errors. And that will be our main mechanism for checking, 340 of the 350 lists. The other 10 will be the finalists, which will obviously get checked through the same mechanism. But then we'll do a double check in advance of the last game for anyone that can potentially.
That last little bit is what's I think going to really help. I mean, as a tournament organizer myself, we've done very similar things, and it only takes that one error to get through.
Yeah, exactly. And it's obviously the higher up the person finishes, the more public those errors are. So we've tried to really invent a process that will minimize the work for the 95% of lists that either are not going to podium or
that's good.
There's no problem.
You're doing it. You're putting it out there as something that people can do, and you're encouraging it. And that is something I think that the community should all do for things like this, because whether we want it to or not, it matters for lots of people, and there's no reason not to do it.
Yeah, it's just work, right? It's just a bit of tournament organizing.
Some of it is. Okay, you mean publishing it? Yeah, publishing it is a little bit of work, but to us, I mean, this is just another element of the hobby. I mean, this is one of those hobbies where we spend hours and hours doing all different kinds of things, and some of that is just looking over somebody else's army list.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you get to again, sort of making the contrast between event sizes, a 30-person tournament doesn't have a true reflection of the meta. Some would argue that 50 people doesn't either. And when you start getting up to 100 plus, then you really start to see what works, because you're not just getting random pairings that happen to all be against the same lists, and there's one power list that dominate. You have a broad variety of, say, 30 different nuanced power lists. So you could play 6 games, and every single game will be against another, a completely different list, but that list will always be optimized. Well, not always, but maybe. So it's very interesting to peruse lists from large tournaments, because then you get to see, oh, actually, I've been moaning about orcs not coming in the top 3 at these 30-man RTTs. But actually, there's an orc list here that's gone 4-1 and played amazing opponents and amazing lists. So here's that orc list that no one thought existed, and here and this is what it can do when it's in the right hands. And I think people are going to love that. So that's sort of our sort of.
Well, anytime you get that many gamers in one place, I mean, you're going to be pulling from a lot of different gamer gene pools. Is the best way to put it. And so seeing what those people bring and then how well it does is going to be something that's going to be very interesting to follow.
Yeah, I think we've got quite an interesting scenario in the UK, but the event's slightly differently. In the UK, it's a small place. The whole country is basically the size of New York State. So all the best players play each other all the time. In the States, they maybe get a chance to show off against each other 3 or 4 times a year max. In the UK, it's more like once a month. So our very, very high, top tier meta evolves super quickly, because everyone is going to play each other next month and needs to constantly beat each other. And that makes the smaller events in the UK highly competitive, because out of the field, there's maybe 50% of people that have played each other non-stop for the last 5 years and are all credible. But the LGT is slightly different.
That's an interesting way of looking at that.
It's getting the opportunity to play against other people, a variety of players that are better than you, because the more people you play better than you, the better you get. So,
absolutely agree with that. And to being able to objectively look at different things, it's not just looking at the power in the codex. It's looking at what actually completes objectives, defeats other things that other people are taking or you can expect them to take. It is something you have to look at with an objective eye, and you don't always get that when you're just playing in a small group of people, in a small environment.
But jumping back to the LGT is not really like that. It's the only tournament in the UK, or probably apart from the ETC in the whole of Europe, where large amount of our players have travelled from overseas. So we've not just got the little pockets of the meta around the UK. We've got a large number of the Swedish ETC team are coming. We've got some Belgians that are, the top of the Belgian meta. We've got a variety of people coming from all across Europe as well as the States. I think we've sold maybe 20 or 30 tickets to
that's great.
You guys on the other side of the pond. Yeah, so it's going to be a real show, not just of the UK meta, but of the international one, which I think will be it's pretty unparalleled anywhere other than LVL, I think.
I mean, it is just the sheer amount of people is impressive, and the fact that you're going to have. I mean, you're going to have some knockdown, drag out games, even 10, 30 tables deep or more, because those great players are going to be filtering out through the field.
Yeah, I fully expect for this to come down, probably not even to the first set of tiebreakers, but to the second. There'll be a lot of people, I think, that will end on maximum points for primaries. So it'll be interesting to see, what ends up being the route to victory.
Do you have that path to victory? Is it spelled out, at least what the criteria for winning the overall tournament spelled out on the website?
Yeah, all the tiebreakers are listed in the event pack itself. So if you go to the 40k section of the website and then download the event pack, it's all in there. So it's quite clear for everyone, who wants to try to understand how to win, what they need to do is sort of their base criteria. So first things first, they need to win their games. Second things, they need to max points for primaries all their games. Third things, well, these are the sets of tiebreakers I now need to start playing for. So realistically, you've got to, comes back to what I was saying earlier, you've got to be playing for the tiebreakers on the assumption that if you're going to win, you're going to win already. So that's, and you've got to build your army to do that as well, which I think is quite interesting because, linking back I always talk about Elder because it's the army I like the most, but Elder have always had, a little trick here and a little trick there to do these sort of extra things, which is why they've always been so successful in my mind. So Scatbikes are the obvious example. Previous editions, I think Swooping Hawks are probably the replacement in this edition. Being able to pull.
I like them. I think they're deceptively good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm struggling to see at the moment. Obviously, new Codex is coming out. Why? Well, my prediction is that Hawks and Reapers with a couple of Warthogs and a Farsi is going to be the list to beat over the next couple of months.
Okay.
It's won 200-man events in the UK in consecutive weeks. So yeah, I think that's really a dominant list at the moment. But we'll see.
Swooping Hawks have been used, but Dark Reapers haven't been used competitively in a long time.
No, I've not seen them around for quite a while.
But it is nice to see these things coming back, and I do think the Eldar Codex is good. But I actually have liked most of the codexes. Actually, I've liked all the codexes from this edition, and some of them do require a little bit more finesse than the others, and that's not a bad thing. And I think we'll see that play out in this event like yours.
Yeah, and it's always the most skilled and most expert players that can get the most out of the hardest to use codexes because they're the guys playing the most. They're out practicing every day or every couple of days. And Elder's always one of those because once you get them, once you shoot them, or once you manage to pin them in a corner or whatever their weakness happens to be, they die. Right? It's not a 2-up rerollable edition anymore.
Back on the tournament, where in the city is the event?
So this is probably the most exciting thing about the whole event. So yeah, it's massive. It's second largest event, or 40k event in the world now, but it's actually in the Olympic Stadium. So within the 2012 Olympic Stadium where Usain Bolt won a gold medal, you too can win a gold medal by coming here and playing 40k. So we're super excited to have such an amazing venue.
Is that over near one of the airports?
Yeah, it's right by London City Airport.
That's right. I couldn't think of the name. Yeah.
That's a bit of a business class airport. So majority of people will probably fly in either to Heathrow, Gatwick, or Stansted. It's really close to Stansted too, but the transatlantic flights will mostly be into Heathrow or Gatwick. But if the Olympic Stadium can host 200,000 people over the course of a couple of weeks, 60,000 people a day, I'm sure it can cope with 1,000-person 40k convention.
It's going to be great. Just more thinking about where in the city it was and what are some other things people could do while they're over there if they are traveling a long way.
Sure. So obviously the stadium has tours and does all that sort of stuff. So the whole Olympic Park itself and compound is quite interesting. But London's a global city. The Olympic Stadium is in the East End, so you can go to the foundry, where they made the Liberty Bell. Also the same place where they made the Big Ben Bell. So there's a nice little historical section of the East End which has that and some armories, and you can go do a Jack the Ripper walking tour. See the places he killed his victims, or anything really. I mean, London's like Manhattan. You
just a tube right away, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Stratford, which is where the stadium is one of the most connected places on the planet. It's got a host of different transport connections across the whole London. But if you're coming all the way, whether across Europe or across the States or whatever it is, your tournament, your convention doesn't have to end on the Sunday. So what we've organised as well is basically a group trip up to Warhammer World on the Monday after the convention. So
that's neat.
Yeah, exactly. I think, obviously, I've been there a bunch of times, but every time I go, there's a different exhibition on in the exhibition center. I'll actually get to play a game of 40k. So if anyone wants to challenge me, I'll be doing some gaming in the gaming hall. People can have a burger and a beer in Bugman's. And it's only, a couple of hours on the train. So we're going up
It's an easy
in the morning.
ride, too. It's an easy train ride up there.
Yeah, it's super easy. So, if anyone's coming and wants to do that, it's being run not for any purpose other than a number of people requested we did it. So, we put it on.
How many pubs are near where you are playing the event? And do you have beer service available in the hall?
We have beer in the hall. It's not table service, which I think is the holy grail. I've only been to, I think, one event that's had table service beer, and it was amazing. It was so good.
It is amazing. We do that here.
Yeah. I'll have to come sometime.
It's worth it. It's worth the trip.
Yeah. No, so we've got beer in the hall. There's, the Olympic Stadium has bars and pubs and stuff in it. So we have to, obviously arrange for them to open some, as part of our, contract to rent the venue. But the Olympic Park, which is sort of the immediate area surrounding the stadium, doesn't have any extra bars in. What it does have right next to it is a place called Stratford Westfield. So Westfield is a brand of mega shopping malls, and they've got 24-hour casinos. They've got bars open all night long. We're doing a pub crawl on the Saturday night to a number of sort of East End dive bars, I guess you'd call them, that are open until sort of 4 a.m. So there's lots of stuff going on, around London that are sort of broadly associated to the convention. But in the Olympic Park itself, it's mostly sporting facilities. So there's the bar and the venue, and then
still sounds great though. I mean, I like the organized events that are outside of the tournament, because again, some people could be traveling for quite a ways, or just seeing people they only see once or twice a year, and being able to get out and do something else, and being cognizant of that is great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's two approaches I always take whenever I'm trying to sort of pitch to myself one of these sort of side event things that we want to do. One is, I'm a hardcore tournament player. Go to events as often as I can. Go to win. And there's that sort of player that come to my event. But then there's also players that might only go to one tournament a year because it's convenient or because it's the biggest or whatever reason. So then I've got members of our team that are like that are massive hobbyists, like to play 6 games or 5 games over the course of the weekend, but never would never travel 5 hours to a tournament or whatever. So I always pitch an idea to them and then to myself. So if it was something that I would like to do, something that they would like to do, then I think that the convention attendees as a broader demographic would probably like to do it too.
Yeah, it's a good way of doing it, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show and taking some time to talk about the event. I know this is something that people are going to be following. I'd like to touch base with you closer to it to try to get, can I get an idea? Maybe once after lists are submitted, we can chat again to talk about maybe some analysis on what you actually see there over that broad collection of folks.
Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting to do some, page turn some of the lists and see what we think is going to win, and then compare that to what actually does win.
That'd be great. And I know that's a bit away, so we can actually touch base a couple times in between now and then. But then I definitely want to have that talk with you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Zach, man, have a good rest of your night.
Great. Thanks very much, Paul.
Go ahead, make my day.